when my legitimate younger sister knelt in the snow in tattered cloth shoes begging me for money to save her husband, I laughed as I tossed millions in silver notes into the brazier for warmth. I've bought up the debts of the Su Marquis household. As for you lot, go work on the farm and shovel dung to pay back what you owe. Welcome to Ancient Tales, an exciting story is about to begin. My whole body ached as if run over by a cart. I struggled to open my eyes. But what met my gaze was not the Su Marquis exquisitely carved canopy bed, but a layer of dust-covered, black lacquered beams. My nostrils were full of the musty smell of rotten straw and the acrid sting of cheap dry tobacco. I jerked upright. The brilliant red wedding dress on me was rough and prickly. Clearly not the gold-threaded satin-pleated gown my mother had sewn by hand. Awake? A cold, low voice suddenly came from the dark corner by the wall. I was so startled I trembled all over and turned toward the sound. I saw a young man wearing a dark cloth garment washed pale and patched, quietly seated in a crude wooden wheelchair. His legs were covered with a coarse thin blanket. His complexion had the pallor of someone who had not seen sunlight for a long time, but his eyes were as black as bottomless pools, staring at me coldly. This was not the Su Marquis' residence. Scenes from 2 days before flashed through my mind like a carousel. On the eve of the wedding, my stepmother Lady Lu dragged my legitimate sister Lu Wanyin into my room and pretended to be caring as she brought a cup of calming tea, saying it was to wish me a smooth, worry-free life in the Su Marquis' household. I was about to be married and did not want to start a conflict with them, so I drank it. As a result, that sleep was dead heavy. I slept until this moment. Where is this? Who are you? I forced myself to calm down, clenching my palms so hard my nails dug into the flesh. The sting cleared my head a little. The man in the wheelchair tugged at the corner of his mouth, revealing a mocking sneer. This is Gu's village on the outskirts of the capital. My name is Gu Tingzhou. I'm a farmer with both legs ruined. As for you, you were supposed to be the second miss of the Lu family, but somehow you've become the Lu family's eldest daughter. Lu Mingwei. Gu's village? Gu Tingzhou? A thunderclap went off in my head, and I understood in an instant. A while back the Lu family had indeed arranged a marriage. They said my stepmother Lady Lu, to accrue merit for the branch household, planned to marry off a coarse maid or an illegitimate daughter from the mansion to a farmer in the outskirts of the capital who had been disabled by an injury. At the time Lady Lu even put on a show of sighing in front of me, saying the farmer was a pitiable man, but I could never have imagined they were brazen enough to drug my tea before the journey, stuff me, the legitimate daughter of the main house, into a battered bridal sedan headed for Gu family village. And Lu Wanyin took my place, marrying into the Su Marquis household in all its glory, becoming the wife of his heir, the position she had long coveted. I tore off the coarse red veil from my head, looked down at the rough cotton wedding dress I wore whose hems were already coming undone, and laughed in fury. Ms. Lu Wanyin, you truly are my good stepmother and good sister. Since you married the wrong man, why didn't you send me back? I suppressed the anger in my heart and stared at Gu Tingzhou. Gu Tingzhou shook his head, his deep eyes devoid of warmth. When the Lu family brought you here, they also brought a voluntary renunciation, stamped with your fingerprint. Your father, Lord Lu, has already announced to the clan that the eldest Miss, Lu Mingwei, has behaved disgracefully and has been expelled from the Lu family genealogy. From now on her life and death have nothing to do with the Lu family. Do you think if you return now the Lu residence will open its gates to welcome you? Or will they use a white silk to strangle you to preserve the Lu family's face? I felt ice run through me. My good father, in order to please the new bride and to keep the Su Marquis' household from discovering any flaws, actually acted with such heartlessness. They not only snatched away the million taels of silver notes my mother left me and the deed to the booming shop in the capital, but they also intended to erase my existence completely, to let me rot like mud under the earth, left to fend for myself in this peasant household. I clenched my fists until the knuckles clicked. You don't look surprised, and you don't seem like an ordinary peasant, I said, studying Gu Tingzhou before me, an ordinary disabled farmer, facing a marquis's legitimate daughter, facing the ludicrous switch the identity plot of the Lu family. How could he be so composed? His every gesture, even that cool, low voice, carried a dignity that did not belong in this dilapidated farmhouse. I'm nothing but a good-for-nothing. Marrying anyone would be the same. Gu Tingzhou said coldly. If you want to leave, I won't stop you. But you have not a penny to your name. Once you step out that door, you probably won't survive even tonight. I braced myself on the edge of the bed and stood up. The hangover-like effects of the medicine made me unsteady. I wanted to find some water, and as I stumbled, my foot accidentally kicked a loose blue brick beneath the wooden bed. There was a faint clack. Because of that kick, a previously concealed compartment under the bed shifted slightly, exposing the corner of an old black lacquered wooden box. Gu Tingzhou's previously calm eyes suddenly narrowed. His right hand slammed onto the armrest of the wheelchair, his fingernails nearly digging into the wood. I keenly sensed an extra chill of murderous intent in the air. I did not flinch. Instead, I crouched down and yanked the wooden box out. Don't touch. Gu Tingzhou's voice was as cold as tempered ice. Before I knew it, a blade as thin as a cicada's wing had appeared in his right hand. I ignored his threat. I come from my maternal grandfather's family of wealthy merchants, and from a young age I watched him handle all manner of rare treasures. When I opened the wooden box and revealed a piece of agarwood glowing with a faint blue light and a seal entwined by a 9-clawed golden dragon, warm and smooth as mutton-fat white jade, my breath completely stopped. The bottom of the seal was startlingly engraved with 8 large seal script characters. Jiangnan Gu family, 9 provinces exchange. 9 provinces exchange. The Gu family master seal. I snapped my head up and stared hard at Gu Tingzhou. You are the head of the wealthy Gu family of Jiangnan? Rumor had it that 2 years ago, the Gu family of Jiangnan, rich enough to rival a nation, was implicated in a succession struggle and had their home raided and sealed overnight. The Gu clan members were almost all killed or injured, except for that astonishingly gifted young master Gu Tingzhou, who went missing. The court hunted him for 2 full years. Who would have thought he would have severed his own legs and buried his name to hide in this ruined peasant house on the outskirts of the capital? The short blade in Gu Tingzhou's hand was already pressed against my throat, the cold edge grazing my skin. With the slightest movement from him, I would be doomed. When you found out who I am, do you think you can still live? His eyes surged with bloodthirsty murderous intent. I looked at the dagger in front of me, and instead of being afraid, I chuckled. Mr. Gu, you endured for 2 years. Was it just to kill a woman who was also driven to desperation in this broken house? I edged forward an inch toward his blade, my beautiful eyes fixed on him. You kept this seal, which shows you never gave up on the Gu family's covert enterprises scattered across Zhejiu. You want revenge. But right now you're a dead man, and your legs are crippled. You have no way to step into the light. Gu Tingzhou's eyes narrowed slightly, but the blade did not move away. And I, Lu Mingwei, my mother's family used to be the largest cloth merchant in Jiangnan. Since childhood I managed the ledgers, knew how to steer funds around the authorities, watchful eyes, and knew how to turn 1 tael of silver into 10, 100. I spoke each word deliberately, my gaze blazing. You give me the key to your wealth, and I'll be your hands and feet. We join forces. You take back the Gu family, I reclaim my mother's dowry, and we tear apart the hypocritical masks of the Lu family and the Su Marquis household. How about it? The room fell into a death-like silence, broken only by the bitter wind outside, howling past. Gu Tingzhou stared at me intently, his look both judgmental and like a reevaluation of my worth. His Adam's apple bobbed once, and the hand that had held the dagger finally loosened inch by inch. Lu Mingwei, you have a bold spirit. He withdrew the dagger, a teasing smile curling at his lips. But what makes you think I can trust you? Just this. I took from my bosom a mutton-fat jade pendant I wore close to my body, the only token my mother left me on her deathbed, carved with the Lin family crest of Jiangnan. This is the Lin family's secret order for the canal docks. With it, tonight we can withdraw the first sum from the Lin family's secret warehouse, the money that can turn the tables for us. Gu Tingzhou looked at the pendant. The coldness in his eyes finally dissolved, replaced by a flash of ambitious light. Good. He slowly reached out his hand, palm up. Deal. I smiled and placed my hand on his palm. In that moment our temperatures intertwined, cold and mingling. Lu clan, Lu Wanyin, Su Jing'an. You thought you had stamped me into the mud, But you did not know that with your own hands you sent me onto the skyward road to the greatest wealth in this world. The show has begun. That night, the darkness was ink black, avoiding the village's eyes and ears. I took the Lin family jade pendant and knocked on the back door of a seemingly dilapidated rice merchant's shop in town. At first the old shopkeeper still looked impatient, but when he made out the jade pendant in the dim candlelight he shuddered all over, immediately burst into tears and knelt on the ground, calling out Miss Lin of the family. Half an hour later I returned to that shabby hut carrying an unremarkable coarse cloth bundle. Inside it were the 100,000 taels in banknotes sealed in the underground treasury. These were the secret funds my maternal grandfather had left to my mother. Those fools of the Lu family could rummage through the storerooms and never find them. Gu Tingzhou sat quietly in the wheelchair, watching me lay the thick stack of banknotes on the table. There was no trace of greed in his eyes. Instead, a plainly undisguised appreciation flickered across them. He spoke no idle words but took from his sleeve an order token forged of black iron and tossed it onto the desk in front of me. This is the diding token of the Gu family's shadow network. Gu Tingzhou's voice carried absolute command in the dark night. The 12 underground banks in the capital, 8 underground granaries, and the 3 major grain guilds along the Jiangnan route will treat this token as if they were facing the head of the household. With 100,000 taels as principal, I want to see how you, a disgraced marquis, abandoned daughter who was driven out, will turn the capital upside down. I will not let Master Gu down. I clenched the cold token in my hand, the blood in my chest boiling as if over hot water. Over the next 3 months, by day I was the farmer's wife in the village who never left the gate in the eyes of the villagers. By night I changed into brocade and men's clothes, pulled on a veil, and took the signal carriage to the back courtyard of the capital's largest tea house. As Gu family's special envoy, I decisively reorganized the Gu family's dormant undercover network. With Gu Tingzhou directing affairs behind the scenes and plentiful silver in my hands, the Gu family's commercial empire was like a great beast awakened from slumber, quietly baring its fangs in the shadows. That evening, the chief steward of the Gu family's covert network respectfully presented a ledger. Master, the Lu family's properties you've asked us to investigate have been identified, the chief steward said, head bowed. 9 out of 10 of the Lu family's current incomes rely on the 8 prosperous shops your birth mother left behind, especially the capital's largest silk shop, Yunjin Pavilion, and the Western Spice Specialty, Jixiang House. Both of these shops have now been assigned as part of the dowry and fall under the name of the heir's wife, Lu Wanyin. I flipped through the account book and snorted. Lu Wanyin was using my mother's hard-earned money to show off and play the head lady at the Su Marquis residence. Does she really think the silver fell from the sky? I turned to look at Gu Tingzhou, who sat in a custom-made stainless steel wheelchair. The Gu family's silk business in Jiangnan, can it still carry any weight? Gu Tingzhou toyed with the teacup in his hand, his tone casual but carrying an indisputable authority. Of the 3 major weaving houses in Jiangnan, the backers of 2 of them are surnamed Gu. Good. I snapped the account book shut, a hard edge in my eyes. Issue my orders. Immediately cut off all supplies of top-grade Su embroidery and yin brocade to the Yunjin Pavilion. Not only in Jiangnan, within 500 li of the capital, no one is to provide even a foot of fine cloth to any Lu shop. And Jixiang Tower, send people to the official road 20 li outside the city and intercept and buy out all the finest spices held by the Western trade caravans at a 20% markup. The chief shopkeeper hesitated. Master, buying out the spices at a 20% markup will thin our profit margins. What I want isn't profit. I want to starve them out, I said coldly, shooting him a glance. I want the Lu family's shops, 1 foot of cloth, 1 tael of incense can't get in. In less than half a month, I'll watch them be driven to death by their own people. As it turned out, I had still overestimated the foundations of the Lu family and the Su Marquis residence. But in just half a month, the shops of the Lu family and the Su Marquis household faced a catastrophe. I sat in the private room of the tea house, listening to the secret reports brought by my scouts, a mocking curve forming at the corner of my mouth. Because Yunjin Pavilion couldn't deliver the autumn garments that the capital's noble wives had long since paid deposits for, several fierce titled madams brought their servants and smashed the signboard. Not only did they demand double compensation for the deposits, the shopkeeper of Yunjin Pavilion was even escorted to Shentian Prefecture. Jixiang Tower fared even worse. Unable to get new incense for a long time, customers were taken by the shop across the street, the warehouse filled with inferior spices no one wanted, and they couldn't even pay the clerks' wages. When the source of income was cut off, the first to panic was naturally Lu Wanyin. The secret report made it very clear. Lu Wanyin had just married into the Su Marquis. To secure her footing, she had not only lavishly rewarded the servants but had also boasted she would contribute 3,000 taels to repair the matriarch's Buddhist hall. The Su family thought they had married a little goddess of fortune, only to have the steward from her shop suddenly arrive at the Marquis in tears, declaring the accounts were not just empty but actually owed several thousand taels in breach of contract fines to suppliers, urgently needing the mistress to use her personal silver to settle the bills. Lu Wanyin smashed a teacup on the spot in distress. Raised in comfort since childhood, she knew nothing of business. The shop had always been run by others while she simply reached out each month for money. Now that the supply had been cut off, she was utterly flustered and could only secretly send someone back to the Lu residence to plead with her stepmother, Lady Lu, for help. But Lady Lu was now like a clay idol crossing the river, unable to save herself. The Lu family's main household expenses had long been subsidized by siphoning off profits from the dowry shops owned by my mother. With all 8 prosperous shops collapsing at once, the Lu household couldn't even scrape together the money to buy coal for the masters to get through the winter. Lady Lu couldn't provide funds to assist her daughter. Instead, she hoped Lu Wanyin could fetch some silver from the Su Marquis back to her natal home to tide them over. The mother and daughter relied on each other, but it all came to nothing. The dog-eat-dog drama was quietly unfolding within the two households. What? Enjoying watching them get their comeuppance? Gu Tingzhou, at some point pushing his wheelchair, had come up behind me. Seeing the barely suppressed pleasure on my face, a rare softness flashed through his deep eyes. It's just cutting off their dog food. I tossed the secret report into the nearby brazier and watched the flames instantly devour it into ashes. Cutting off their funds is only the first step. It's easy to go from frugality to extravagance, but hard to return from extravagance to frugality. Those bloodsuckers at the Su Marquis, how could they tolerate a future madam who can't produce money? I turned, braced my hands on the desk, and looked at Gu Tingzhou with burning eyes. Next, I'll make them, to cover the shortfall, willingly slip their necks into the noose I've long since prepared. The decline of the Su household came even faster than I had expected. I sat in the back room of the newly opened Wanqing Bank, separated by a thin bamboo screen, watching Su Jing'an's face, once proud and aloof, now written over with despondency and agitation. Today he wore a half-worn, not quite new sapphire brocade robe. The mutton-fat jade pendant at his waist was nowhere to be seen, replaced by a cheap piece of mixed jade. Opposite him sat an unfamiliar bookkeeper Gu Tingzhou had specially transferred from the south. Surname Zhao, commonly called Manager Zhao. Zhao the cashier. This interest really can't be negotiated any further? Su Jing'an lowered his voice, a hint of humiliated pleading in it. Zhao the cashier toyed with the golden abacus in his hands without lifting an eyelid. His voice icy. Young Master Su, you know as well as I do that the capital's silver supply is tight now. Even the government borrows grain from us. If it weren't for the Su Marquis's century-old reputation, we would never release these 50,000 taels of silver. 3% interest. Not a fraction less. And it must be secured with land deeds or storefronts of equivalent value. Su Jing'an clenched his fists so hard his knuckles went white blue. I sat behind the curtain, holding a cup of now cold bitter tea, a mocking smile at the corner of my mouth. The Su Marquis has been prominent in the capital for years, but inside it had long been squandered away by old Marquis Su and several useless concubine-born sons. Su Jing'an married Lu Wanyin originally for my mother's dowry of 1,000,000 taels, hoping to use it to cover the Su family's century-long deficit. But what he never expected was that what Lu Wanyin brought into the house was not only a pile of dead shops that couldn't restock, but also a mess of bad debts. Now with Madame Su's 70th birthday approaching, if the Su family couldn't even throw a respectable birthday banquet, they would become a complete laughingstock among the capital's circle of powerful families. All right, I'll sign. Su Jing'an seemed to squeeze the words out through his teeth. Trembling, he pressed a red thumbprint onto the carefully drafted loan contract. What he mortgaged was the Su family's last trump card, the most fertile 3,000 acres of farmland in the outskirts of the capital. Only after Su Jing'an left the bank in a daze did I slowly step out from behind the curtain. Master, the fish has taken the bait. Zhao Dagui respectfully handed the contract to me. I glanced at the handprint on it and said coldly, "Well done. Send people to tail the Su family and see what Lu Wanyin is doing now. Su Jing'an has suffered such humiliation. He needs somewhere to vent." Just as I expected, the moment Su Jing'an returned to the Marquis's residence, he erupted into a fierce argument with Lu Wanyin. According to a spy hidden in the Marquis's residence, Su Jing'an stormed into Lu Wanyin's courtyard and slapped that 3% promissory note in her face. He roared, demanding to know where those so-called generous dowry funds had gone. Lu Wanyin wailed and accused the Su family of being a pit that devours people without leaving bones. In a blind rage, Su Jing'an not only slapped her but also locked her in the ancestral hall, forcing her to write to the Lu family within 3 days to demand back the 1 million taels of silver that had been skimped. But how could the Lu family have money? To cover Lu Buyong's shortfall at the Ministry of Revenue, the Lius had long since drained all the ready silver the Lu family could muster. Just as the two households were in an uproar, Gu Tingzhou received an unexpected visitor in my farmhouse courtyard. He was the most favored young prince in the great Qi court and the ostensible closest friend of Su Jing'an. His visit today was about the 3,000 acres the Su family had mortgaged to Wancheng Money House. Mr. Gu, that land was originally the hereditary grant bestowed on the Su family by the court. Now that it has fallen into the hands of a private bank, it seems irregular. The young prince tapped his folding fan, his gaze sweeping over Gu Tingzhou's wheelchair with a hint of scrutiny. Gu Tingzhou sat quietly under the shade of the tree, twirling a chess piece between his fingers, his tone indifferent. "Your Grace jokes. Opening a business like Wancheng Money House operates on mutual consent. Young Master Su urgently needs funds. He mortgaged land, the contract is legal, and the government has it on record. If the Su family can repay on time, the land will of course remain theirs. If they cannot..." He lifted his eyes to the prince, his gaze as sharp as a drawn sword. "Then this realm should be held by the virtuous, and governed by the wealthy." The young prince was taken aback by that force for a moment, then threw back his head and laughed, glancing at me with a look full of meaning before turning and leaving. Only after the man had gone did I frown and look at Gu Tingzhou. "You shouldn't have exposed your strength at a time like this. This young prince is the current emperor's own brother. If he realizes your identity..." "Minwei, are you worried about me?" Gu Tingzhou suddenly cut off my words. A smile rippled in his deep black eyes, like snow beginning to thaw. I froze, instinctively looking away. "I just don't want my partner getting into trouble and ruining my plan for revenge." "Don't worry." He wheeled his chair closer to me and lowered his voice. "This little prince isn't here to help the Su family. He's the Su family's biggest creditor. Most of the Su Marquis debts over the years are in his hands. I merely gave him an opportunity to completely swallow up the Su family." My heart jolted. So Gu Tingzhou's scheme was even bigger than mine. While I was watching the financial channels of the Su and Lu families, he had already been eyeing the lifelines of the court's powerful. "It's about time." I composed myself, a sliver of ruthlessness flashing in my eyes. "Madame Su's birthday banquet is set for 3 days from now. I will make Lu Wanyin watch with her own eyes on that day how the noble life she prides herself on utterly collapses." On the day of the banquet, the Su Marquis residence was hung with lanterns and banners, appearing as if a great blaze burned, when in truth it was the last gasp of a spent bough. I changed into a simple yet quietly luxurious cloud satin gown, donned a thin veiled hat, and, posing as the wife of a wealthy Jiangnan merchant, swaggered through the Su residence gates with the Gu family's convoy. As the Su family's heir's wife, Lu Wanyin, though just released from the ancestral hall, had to force a smile as she greeted guests at the door. Her face was plastered with heavy lead-white makeup, but it could not hide the blue-black shadows and puffiness under her eyes. When she saw me pass, those resentful, venomous eyes suddenly narrowed. Although I wore a hood, that aristocratic bearing ingrained to the marrow, from being an official daughter, made her instantly feel a sense of ill omen. "Madam, you look somewhat familiar." She blocked my way, her voice sharp with a hint of tremor. I looked down at her coldly through the light veil. My tone steadied but each word cutting to the heart. The crown prince's consort is prone to forgetfulness. What you should be worrying about now is not who I am, but the old lady Su in the great hall behind you, who is waiting to receive your tribute. I stepped aside past her, lowered my voice, and whispered in her ear, "Oh, I forgot to tell the crown prince's consort, those few shops you mortgaged to Wanyin Money House were seized by the authorities this morning for insolvency." Lu Wanyin's body shook violently, and her face instantly turned as pale as paper. I ignored her loss of composure and walked straight into the hall. In the center of the hall, old Madame Su sat in a high seat. Su Jing'an strode forward in high spirits, presenting an exquisite brocade box and loudly declaring, "Your grandson is unworthy, but I specially found a century-old snow ginseng, wishing old Madame a longevity as vast as the Eastern Sea." However, before he could open the brocade box, a sudden clatter of horse hooves sounded from outside the door. A squad of Jingzhou constables in iron armor, carrying official documents, strode in. "Young Master Su, what a coincidence," the lead officer sneered. "Wanqing Bank has filed a complaint, saying the Su Marquis residence is suspected of forging mortgage documents, repeatedly mortgaging government land that had already been sold to others. The amount involved is as high as 50,000 taels of silver. We are now going to seize all the account books of the Su Marquis residence." The hall erupted in commotion. The brocade box in Su Jing'an's hand fell to the floor with a snap, revealing the shriveled, miserable-looking cheap ginseng inside. As for me, standing among the crowd and watching Lu Wanyin slump to the ground as if struck by lightning, I felt nothing but exhilaration. This is merely just the beginning. Old Madame Su's birthday banquet turned into a veritable joke. With the IOU irrefutable, the magistrate's doors were sealed. To avoid being arrested on the spot and locked in the Shuntian prefecture prison, Su Jing'an could only grit his teeth and kneel before the old madam to swear a venomous oath, promising to make up the missing 50,000 taels of silver within 3 days. And the burden of that enormous sum naturally fell entirely on Lu Wanyin, who had only just married into the household. The Su family peeled away the veneer of her cash cow status, exposing nothing but scorn and cruelty. Su Jing'an went so far as to threaten that if she couldn't scrape together the money to settle the account, he would immediately divorce her. Lu Wanyin was driven to a dead end. 3 mornings later, the first snow had just melted, and the main gate of Yanjin Pavilion on the capital's main street was tightly closed. I sat in Gu Tingzhou's specially made carriage, drawn by 8 pure white steeds, outwardly modest but lined entirely with golden Nanma wood, and listened quietly to the sharp curses coming from outside the carriage window. "You pack of dog servants! How dare you turn against me? I am the heiress of the Su Marquis house, the owner of this Yanjin Pavilion. I hereby order you to take out all the cash on the books immediately. If there is no cash, then sell this shop along with the land deed." Lu Wanyin's voice was hysterically frantic. She didn't even bother with the dignity of a noble daughter-in-law. She personally led several fierce household guards from the Marquis' residence and was smashing at the vermilion door of Yanjin Pavilion, which was tightly shut. The old shopkeeper of Yanjin Pavilion peered through the crack in the door, face strained as he pleaded, "Young madam, it's not that this humble man won't, there really is no money in the shop. A while ago our supply was cut off and we had to pay the customers a large sum in breach damages, and now the books are cleaner than our faces. As for the land deed, the deed you have is only the copy. The original deed, we've never even seen it. Nonsense. The dowry my mother gave me could never be fake. Smash it for me." Lu Wanyin had completely lost her senses. "Open the door." I set down the brazier in my hands and turned my head to give Gu Tingzhou a slight smile. He wore a dark cloak edged with gold today, sitting quietly at my side like a king lying in wait in the night. He said nothing, only reached out to smooth the ties of my fox fur cloak, his deep eyes full of absolute indulgence. "Go. In this capital, tread however you wish." I drew a deep breath and pushed open the carriage door. When, with the help of my attendants, I stepped onto the flagstones before the Yanjin Pavilion, every gaze around me was drawn. I was not wearing a hood today. My hair was arranged in the most exquisite Fashion bun, and in it I had set a priceless headdress of vermilion gold, kingfisher and ruby. What I wore was the supreme Miaoguang brocade from the Jiangnan Weaving Bureau, a piece that took 3 years to produce and could not be bought for any price by the Yanjin Pavilion. This entire outfit, not to mention being the daughter-in-law of a fallen marquis, would make even an imperial consort jealous. Lu Wanyin whipped her head around, her bloodshot eyes fixed on me. At first there was only jealousy and suspicion in them, but when she finally recognized my face, she went pale as if she had seen a ghost and staggered back 2 steps. Lu Mingwei, she cried out shrilly, her voice splitting. What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be out in that godforsaken backwater, following that lame useless man and hauling manure? How dare you? Before I spoke, the household covert guards of the Gu family moved forward like phantoms, delivering 2 sharp slaps that landed squarely on Lu Wanyin's heavily powdered face. Lu Wanyin screamed from the blows and fell to the ground. Her coiffure instantly came apart and one side of her face swelled high. The Ho residence's servants behind her tried to step forward, but were forced to their knees by the cold long blades the Gu guards drew in unison. What do you think you are, daring to address my lady by name? The leader of the guards snarled. I looked down from above at Lu Wanyin, sitting in the melted snow, and slowly curled my lips. Sister, long time no see. Thanks to the clever plotting of you and our stepmother, you arranged for me to be married in my place into a rural household. Otherwise, how could I have met such an attentive and considerate husband? Lu Wanyin covered her face, staring at my ostentatious display of wealth in disbelief. Jealousy and shock contorted her features. This is impossible. It can't be. That Gu Tingzhou was clearly a penniless cripple. Where did you steal those clothes and that spectacle from? You must have hooked up with some wild man. You whore! She spat curses without restraint, trying to hide her fear with the most vicious words. I couldn't be bothered to argue, and turned to the old shopkeeper of Yanjin Pavilion. Open the door and welcome the rightful owner inside. The old shopkeeper froze, then saw the mutton fat jade pendant held high in my hand, my mother's token from the Jiangnan Trade Guild, and the sole secret order to take over these 8 prosperous shops. He trembled all over, immediately ordered the latch removed, and respectfully ushered me in. Stop right there. This is my shop. It was part of the dowry the Lu family gave me. Seeing what happened, Lu Wanyin scrambled up like a madwoman and tried to rush over to snatch it. I stopped, drew a stack of yellow deeds from my sleeve, and slapped them onto her face with a whack. Open your bloody eyes and look clearly. This is the death contract my mother signed years ago at the Jiangnan Chamber of Commerce. My gaze was icy, each word ringing out. These 8 shops, along with every single account in them, are written plainly on the main deed as passed only to her one biological daughter, Lu Mingwei. What the Lu family took back then was merely a custodial subsidiary deed the chamber issued to placate them. Lu Wanyin picked up the deed from the ground with trembling hands. Seeing the chamber's bright red seal and her birth mother's private stamp, her face drained of color completely. No, this can't be. Father clearly said these had already been transferred into my name. She shook her head constantly, utterly broken. That was your father's foolishness. I sneered coldly, pressing forward step by step. He thought that by erasing me from the clan rolls he could legitimately seize my mother's property? What a delusion! Without the master deed and token in my hands, not a single cent of profit from those 8 shops are you taking away. I swept my gaze over the shopkeepers and passers-by who had long been stunned, and announced loudly, as of today, the 8 shops including Yanjin Pavilion and Jishong Tower in the capital are formally reclaimed under our Jiangnan Gu family's name. The silver that the Lu family and the Su Marquis residents forcibly removed from the shops will be handled as embezzlement of the owner's funds. Shopkeeper, take the accounts immediately to Shentian Prefecture and report this, make them disgorge the money they swallowed. Principal plus interest. Lu Mingwei, how dare you? Lu Wanyin screamed as she lunged at me. The Su Marquis residents will not let you off. I'm going to Shentian Prefecture right now to report you for robbing people's property. Go sue me. Inside the carriage, Gu Tingzhou's cold, low voice drifted out. The carriage curtain was lifted by the wind, revealing his unmatched handsome face, yet as cold as ice. Shentian Prefecture's magistrate just borrowed 300,000 taels of silver from Wanchen Bank yesterday to cover a deficit. You might as well ask him whether he dares to arrest my wife. Gu Soanso's wife. or accept the complaint from you, this Shitsi Fei. At those words, the whole hall fell silent. Lu Wanyin collapsed to the ground like a snake whose sinews had been broken, limp and soft. Only at that moment did she truly realize that the power of the Marquis household she had been proud of was nothing but a fart in the face of the vast wealth we control. Throw this Su heir's consort, along with her dog, into the mud pit across the street. Don't soil my shop. I turned away without mercy and, to a chorus of reverent greetings, stepped into my Yin pavilion. From behind came Lu Wanyin's desperate, piercing cries, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. What she and the Su Marquis household owed me, I would make them repay, bit by bit, with blood and tears before the whole court of civil and military officials. The 3-day deadline passed in the blink of an eye. Outside the main hall of Shuntian Prefecture in the capital, the place was completely packed today. Not only commoners, but many officials who had just left court also stopped to watch. Because today, Shuntian Prefecture was publicly trying a major case. The heir of the Su Marquis, Su Jing'an, was accused of forging official documents, selling, and repeatedly mortgaging 50,000 taels of the court's hereditary official farmlands. This had originally been an ordinary civil dispute, but because it involved the court's official farmlands and because a certain crafty little prince was secretly stirring things up behind the scenes, the case was immediately escalated to a joint trial by the Ministry of Justice and the Censorate. On the hall floor, Su Jing'an knelt with a deathly pale face. The mangpao that marked his status as heir now hung loose and disheveled. Beside him stood my good father, Minister of Revenue Lu Boyong. He was blowing his beard and glaring, trying with all his might to exonerate his son-in-law. Your lordship, this is clearly a trap set by the Wanyin money house, Lu Boyong declared righteously, cupping his hands toward the court in a loud voice. The heir was momentarily confused and deceived by merchants, which led him to mistakenly treat official farmlands as private property and mortgage them. Besides, Wanyin money house is only a private institution. How dare it coerce the descendants of meritorious officials? I suspect there are evildoers behind this, deliberately laying a plot to shake the foundations of our great cheese nobility. No wonder Lu Boyong is a seasoned old hand in officialdom. With a few words he elevated a simple fraud case to the level of the state's foundation and the roots of noble prestige. The Minister of Justice in the hall hesitated slightly, then turned to look at the junior prince seated to the side as an observer. The junior prince leisurely fanned himself, half smiling, half not. Your statement, Lord Lu, is mistaken. Debts must be repaid, that is the way of heaven and earth. Young Master Su signed in black and white and even stamped the private seal of the Su Marquis residence. If everyone could escape guilt by claiming a momentary lapse, would our great cheese laws not become a mere ornament? Moreover, I myself am one of the creditors of the Wanyin money house. Do you imply, Lord Lu, that I arranged a plot to entrap the Su family? I dare not. Sweat beaded on Lu Boyong's forehead as he quickly bowed and clasped his hands. Since Minister Lu believes it's a villain setup, how about I confront you myself? A clear, icy cold voice suddenly came from outside the main hall. The crowd watching fell back like the tide, opening a wide path. I wore a luxurious phoenix robe of black brocade threaded with gold, my hands folded over my lower abdomen, and escorted by a dozen burly Gu family guards with prominent temples. I walked into the hall with composed steps. Beside me, Gu Tingzhou sat quietly in a wheelchair of forged steel, clad in brocade with black background and gold patterns. His gaze was like a cold pool, seemingly calm and unfathomable, yet carrying the dominating pressure of someone in power that made every official present shiver. Lu Mingwei, Su Jing'an and Lu Boyong both exclaimed at the same time. Their eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. You wayward woman! You, a woman driven out of the family and of disgraceful conduct. How dare you barge into the court? Lu Boyong recovered himself and shook with fury, pointing at my nose and hurling abuse. And you cripple, this is the Ministry of Punishments. Hall, you can't cause a scene here. Guards, throw these two lawless rabble out of my court. I'd like to see who dares. Young Prince Xiao slammed his hand on the table and rose to his full height. The usually jaded expression on his face was now icy cold. The clerks in the main hall looked at one another, none daring to move. I glanced at the flustered Lu Boyong. sneered, and slowly drew a thick stack of ledgers and IOUs from my sleeve, handing them to the Minister of Punishments present in the hall. Minister, I, Lu Mingwei, am the current sole proprietor of Wanqing Money House. I am not here for anything else today but to collect a debt from Master Su. I stared directly at Su Jing'an, my voice clear and every word ringing out. Su Jing'an, 3 days have passed. Have you brought the 50,000 taels principal and 15,000 taels interest you owe my bank today? Su Jing'an stared at me fixedly, terror, regret, and anger alternating in his eyes. He could never have imagined that the owner of Wanqing Money House who had driven him into a dead end from the shadows would turn out to be the abandoned concubine's daughter he once treated like trash and even personally sent to the countryside. You're actually the owner of Wanqing? Su Jing'an's voice trembled as he pointed at me. This is impossible. Where did you get so much money? You're nothing but the abandoned wife whose mother's dowry you and your family stole, who you drove out of the house, right? I cut him off with a smile, though my gaze was cold and devoid of warmth. Today this princess consort will teach you a lesson about how heaven's net is wide. Yet nothing slips through. I turned around to face the Minister of Justice and all the civil and military officials in the hall. Minister of the Secretariat, exalted ministers, Su Jing'an, in order to make up for the long-standing embezzlement and shortfall of military funds at the Su Marquis residence, not only forged documents to repeatedly mortgage official fields, but even privately used my Lu family's shop to exchange large amounts of suspicious official silver into cash for personal embezzlement. At these words, the entire hall was stunned. Traitorous woman! You spit lies! Lu Boyong was completely panicked, pointing at me and shouting, "This is personal vendetta! The Su family has been loyal and upright for 100 years, how could they embezzle military funds? You have no proof. This is slandering a court official, deserving of the execution of your entire family. No proof?" Gu Tingzhou sneered. His long fingers tapped rhythmically on the wheelchair armrest. Then he gave a light wave of his hand. A few of the Gu family's covert guards immediately carried several heavy red lacquered chests into the main hall and, in full view of everyone, smashed them open with a loud bang. In an instant, a blinding white light dazzled everyone's eyes. The chests were filled to the brim with silver taels bearing official seals, snowflake silver from the Ministry of Revenue stores. Minister Lu, do these coins look familiar to you? I asked Lu Boyong, a cruel smile curling at the corner of my mouth. They were found last night when a villager's woman sent people to search the underground chambers of Yunjin Pavilion and Jixiang Tower. The official seals and batch numbers stamped on them clearly show they were winter military pay sent to the northern garrison last year. Minister Lu, as the Deputy Minister of Revenue and the de facto overseer of these two establishments, why don't you explain to the Minister of Justice why 500,000 taels that should have been paid to the soldiers in the north were hidden in the dowry shop of your daughter? Lu Boyong stared at the box full of government silver. As if struck by lightning, his face went from pale to green, and finally completely drained of color. His legs buckled and he collapsed to the ground, unable to utter a single word of defense. "Father! Brother-in-law! Save me!" A piercing cry came from the rear of the main hall. Lu Wanyin and her stepmother, Lady Lu, had been brought in by the soldiers from the Lu residence and the Marquis mansion. Their fine garments were already disheveled, their faces streaked with terrified tears. Seeing me, Lu Wanyin lunged as if mad. "Lu Mingwei! You bitch! You ruined us! Father, kill her! She is a daughter of the Lu family. This is patricide and murdering her sister, she will be punished by heaven." Lu family's daughter? I looked at Lu Wanyin, who was screeching like a shrew, and leisurely pulled out from my bosom the voluntary renunciation paper they had forced me to stamp back then. I unfolded the yellowed sheet and showed it to everyone present. "Ladies and gentlemen, please look. This is the renunciation my dear father Lu Boyong personally wrote and forced me to stamp on our wedding day. It clearly states that I, Lu Mingwei, have been expelled from the Lu family genealogy, and from now on my life and death, honor and shame, have nothing to do with the Lu family." I walked up to Lu Wanyin and looked down at her, my gaze full of contempt and pity. "Now, holding the 8 head of family deeds my mother left me, I am the legitimate wife of the Gu family of Jiangnan, Between the Lu family and me there is not a shred of blood or kinship. On the contrary, you are debtors of generations. Minister Lu, young Master Su, you embezzled military funds and misappropriated public money. Today, I am the sword-bearer of this realm, and I will reclaim from you what you owe me, down to the last cent with interest. Your Highness, Minister of Personnel, the evidence is conclusive, please, sir, administer justice impartially. I bowed deeply to the court. The young prince sneered and snapped his folding fan shut with force. Officers, throw the traitor Lu Boyong, Su Jing'an, and accomplices Mrs. Lu and Lu Wanyin into the condemned cells at once. Seize the Su Marquis residence and the Lu household, confiscate all assets to repay debts and military pay. No, this can't be. Su Jing'an screamed as the constables dragged him away. Lu Wanyin and Lady Lu went mad trying to grab my skirt, but were kicked away by the Gu family's guards and dragged like two dead dogs toward the dark, damp dungeon. Watching their desperate, frantic backs, I let out a long breath, feeling the huge boulder that had pressed on my heart for days shatter with a crash. Amid the commotion, a warm, strong hand gently took mine. I turned my head and met Gu Tingzhou's deep, gentle eyes. Minwei, from now on no one in this world will be able to wrong you in the slightest, he said softly. I smiled faintly and squeezed his hand again. Yes, the era that belongs to us is only just beginning. The first snow in the capital fell unusually early, and unusually cold. With the joint retrial by the Ministry of Punishments and the censorate concluded, the emperor's decree struck down on the Su Marquis and the Lu family like thunder. The two households were punished for multiple major crimes: embezzling military funds, deceiving the imperial court, forging official contracts. Their many offenses compounded in sentencing. The Su and Lu households were completely ransacked, their century-old reputations destroyed overnight. Formerly lofty Minister of Revenue Lu Boyong was condemned to execution after the autumn interrogations, and Su Jing'an, the Su heir who had always fancied himself aloof and invincible, was sentenced to exile in the most remote and wicked place, Ningguda, forbidden from ever returning to the capital. As for the women of the two families, they were all sent to the music bureau or sold into slavery to help repay the unfilled deficits in the national treasury and the enormous debts owed to Wancheng Bank. As the biggest creditor of both the Su and Lu families, it was only natural that I bought the contracts for the sale of Lu Wanyin and her stepmother Lady Lu with a sum of silver from the government attendants. The first snow had dusted the bluestone slabs of the Gu family bank's back courtyard. Several silver thread charcoal braziers burned fiercely in the yard, making the surroundings as warm as spring. I am dressed in a fox-red cloak, lazily reclining on a soft couch draped with sable, holding a steaming cup of top-grade Junshan tea. The courtyard gate was pushed open, and two burly old women herded in two women reeking of filth and dressed in tatters, throwing them into the snow like broken sacks. They were Lu Wanyin and Lady Lu. But in just half a month, the once pampered Marquis' son's wife and the official's wife had been worn down to emaciated figures. Lady Lu's hair had turned mostly white, her face covered in frostbite. She lay in the snow too afraid to lift her head, shivering uncontrollably. Lu Wanyin wore a pair of ragged cloth shoes that left even her toes exposed. Those feet that once trod in gold-threaded soft-soled shoes and lorded it around the Marquis residence were now frozen, bluish and festering, swollen like two steamed buns. When she looked up and saw me sitting under the warm eaves, looking down at her from above, the last line of defense in her eyes completely collapsed. Sister, good sister, I'm sorry. I really know I was wrong. Lu Wanyin shuffled in the snow on those ragged shoes, using hands and feet, leaving a long black trail of filth. She reached the steps and threw herself to the ground, banging her forehead against the cold bluestone slabs until blood stained them. Mingwei, please, I'm begging you, for the sake of our past sisterhood, lend me some money, will you? Just 5,000 taels. No, make it 3,000 taels. Jing'an can't stand Ningguda's bitter cold. The constables said if we pay enough in bribes, he might suffer less on the exile road. They could give him a way to survive. She cried as if her heart would tear apart. Humbling herself to the dust, there wasn't a trace left of the arrogance she once had when she stole my marriage prospects and shoved me into the substitute bridal sedan chair. I watched her quietly, said nothing, and reached into the nearby zetan wood box, grabbing a large handful of universal silver notes each denominated at 10,000 taels. That thick stack of notes amounted to at least several tens of millions of taels, enough to buy half of the capital. Lu Wanyin stared at the silver notes in my hand. Her cloudy eyes suddenly flared with a burst of greed and longing. She thought I was going to give the money to her, and she trembled with excitement. Thank you, sister. Thank you for your great kindness. However, before her words had finished, I let out a light laugh and casually tossed that stack of notes worth millions of taels. Like falling snow, each priceless note drifted down and plunged into the brazier before us, which was burning bright red. The flames instantly devoured the notes with a sizzling sound, sending up a dazzling blaze that lit my face, making it vivid and cold. No! Money! My money! Jing'an's life! Lu Wanyin let out a tragic scream and, like a mad dog, lunged toward the brazier, trying with bare hands to grab the burning coals to rescue the banknotes. But the flames mercilessly licked her hands, scorching them so she screamed repeatedly and rolled on the ground. I watched her agony, a cruel, exhilarated smile curling at the corner of my mouth. My voice rang clear in the cold wind, like the sentence of the king of hell. Borrow money to save your husband? Lu Wanyin, are you dreaming? I've already bought up all the debts of the Su Marquis house. The money I'm burning now for warmth could cover the expenses of both the Su and Lu families for generations. As for you, I leaned forward slightly, my gaze like a sharp ice blade piercing her heart. Take your contracts of servitude and go to the lowest of my Gu family's farms to pick manure and work off your debts. For the rest of your lives, you will only be able to lie in the mud and look up at my reflection. Lu Mingwei, you are a devil. May you die a terrible death. Lady Lu cursed hopelessly from the side. I didn't even lift an eyelid, waving my hand. Take these two yapping dogs away. Tell the steward at the farm my orders, see to them well. Don't feed them fully, just leave them alive enough to work. The old women immediately answered and stepped forward, roughly grabbing Lu Wanyin's hair and Lady Lu's collars, dragging them out of the courtyard. Lu Wanyin's desperate, piercing screams faded into the wind and snow until they disappeared entirely. The courtyard fell quiet again, only the brazier occasionally popping with a crisp crack. Madam, today's little performance of yours was truly exquisite. A deep, mellow male voice came from behind me. I was slightly taken aback. The sound didn't come from wheelchair height, but from above my head. I suddenly turned my head and, incredulously, widened my eyes. Gu Tingzhou was not in a wheelchair. He wore a dark purple four-claw python robe, his posture erect like a pine, as if an unshakable mountain, striding with steady, powerful steps until he stood before me. Your legs. I covered my lips in surprise. Though I had long suspected he was not as simple as he seemed, I had not expected him to be able to walk like an ordinary person. Merely a bit of sleight of hand to deceive the heavens and earth. A trace of amusement flashed in Gu Tingzhou's eyes as he reached out to straighten the fur collar of my cloak. During that succession struggle years ago, the late emperor feared the Gu family's wealth and wanted to cut us off entirely. I had no choice but to cripple my martial skills and use breath-holding and pulse-sealing techniques to fake the appearance of crippled legs, thereby escaping death. Now the new emperor has ascended and it is a time for spending. The Gu family no longer needs to hide in the shadows. He took my hand without hesitation. His fingers were knobby, warm, and strong. Minwei, I owe you for the past half year. If you hadn't acted decisively and revitalized the Gu family's darknet operations in the capital, I wouldn't have had the confidence to step into the spotlight so quickly. I looked at the unfathomable man before me who lavished me with tenderness. The last of my resentment and wariness finally dissolved completely. I turned my hand to clasp his, and we stood shoulder to shoulder beneath the eaves, watching the auspicious snow swirl across the sky. Later, Lu Wanyin and Madame Lu were sent to the dirtiest, hardest farm on the outskirts of the capital. According to the steward's report, before dawn every day they had to clean all the latrines on the estate, and any hesitation brought a brutal beating. The mother and daughter who had once been lofty fought over half a steamed bun from a sour water bucket, often coming to blows, ripping each other's hair and hurling curses, living worse than livestock. As for Su Jing'an, During his exile, because no bribes had been paid, the escorts who took him kicked him around in every possible way. Ultimately, struck down by a bout of cold, he died in a wilderness several hundred miles from Ningguda, without even a burial shroud. And my so-called good father, Lu Boyong, was also led to the execution block after the harvest and ended his life of greed and scheming. Everyone who wronged me, humiliated me, or plotted against me received the punishment they deserved. And I, Lu Mingwei, the concubine's daughter once regarded as a cast-off and shoved into a bride's sedan for substitution, now stand side by side with the most exalted man in this world. This realm, from now on, will be ruled by the two of us as husband and wife. Gu Tingzhou wrapped his arms around my waist from behind and solemnly placed a coiled dragon gold seal, the highest symbol of the Gu family's power, into my palm. I felt the heavy weight of the seal, lifted my head, and watched the vast snowfall wash away the filth of this world. Very well, I replied softly, a brilliantly radiant smile unfolding at the corner of my lips. They once tried to trample me into the mud, not knowing that I was a phoenix destined to soar the 9 heavens. With their shove, I instead rose with a whirlwind, seizing the greatest wealth across the 9 provinces and 4 seas, forever keeping them beneath my feet. This magnificent land, its boundless splendor, all at last lies at my fingertips. The end. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment. Thank you.